Hi guys, you're listening to Ladies First only on ABP Life podcasts with me, Niharika Nanda. In this podcast, we have conversations with the real girl bosses of 21st century. Women who have faced their share of hurdles but have emerged victorious nonetheless and have made a world a better place to live for all of us. Today, the woman of substance who has graced ABP Live podcast with her presence is Aditi Gupta, the founder and the author of Menstrupedia comic, a comic that makes the topic of menstruation easy to understand for young girls and for young boys, and is consistently working towards busting the myths and taboos around menstruation. Aditi is a Forbes India 30 under 30 achiever, and she is also named as one of BBC's 100 most influential women in 2015. Hi, Aditi. Welcome to ABP Live Podcasts. How are you?
I'm good, Niharika, and so glad to meet you.
Same here, and I'm so pumped to have this conversation with you. So, Aditi, tell me about this. Like, where did the entire concept of Menstrupedia and the idea stem from?
Right. I think Menstrupedia, the whole idea of why I work on Menstrupedia has to do with all the experiences that I went through when having my periods.
Hmm.
So I grew up in this small place. This place is called Garhwa. It is in
Okay.
Jharkhand,
Okay.
and so my parents are super duper supportive, and I think everything that I've achieved have has to do with how much they sacrificed for and how much they took the effort for educating me. But when it came to about periods, it was such a taboo thing and something that was very common. Like it
Right.
was a conventional thing to do.
Hmm.
So I went through all those rituals, like not rituals, but all the restrictions that
Right.
most of the girls in our country faces. I couldn't sit on the sofa or touch anything that is holy. So during those 7 days of my periods, I used to be considered extremely impure.
Right.
Anything that I would touch would become would become impure, and I was considered to be pure only after the seventh day of my periods.
Right.
One of the things that is very surprising is also that I did not have access to sanitary napkin or anything. At
Ah.
that time, only sanitary napkins were
Hmm.
only available. So, and not because my parents couldn't afford. I think my parents would do everything to make my life comfortable. But it
But
was that who
they
could buy
probably
the
didn't
sanitary
know
napkins
about it
because
at that point.
right. So yeah, Niharika, it was the convention. The usual wisdom was that you do not have to talk about periods.
Right.
And the women suffered in silence. And the thing is that it did not matter which background your socioeconomic background you're coming from. I was coming from a fairly
Hmm.
good, like a family which did good economically also. So sanitary napkins were only available in the medical store.
Right.
Definitely, I couldn't discuss about it with my
Hmm.
father or brothers, whom I was really really close to. So this is how I grew up, looking at my periods as dirty and impure. It was only during, I think, if there is one conversation that changed my perception about periods, and that one conversation that led to the creation of Menstrupedia, was the very first time I had an open conversation about periods to a male person. And this male
Okay.
person is Tuhin Paul, my co-founder and co-author, and also my husband. So this time we were studying at NID and we used to do a lot of projects together. So, and that is how we fell in love. He was a very caring, he is a very caring boyfriend. So I told him, this was the very first time I told a boy that these things happen, these are periods. So when we realized, by discussing, we realized that we come from a very educated background. Like Tuhin was an engineer, I am an engineer, and we did not know about periods. So we thought that there
Right.
would be millions of girls out there who would be ill-informed about menstruation.
Hmm.
We saw it,
And
and
again,
they're
like
rare.
repeating your point, you guys were coming from an educated background. To think that there are people out there where families have not been educated, generations don't have any literacy. So we can't even imagine the kind of secrecy in which periods would be happening around. And in fact, without any education, so that would have been absolutely bizarre to even
Yeah,
think of.
exactly. I mean, if you look at the data itself, like every year in our country, 1.2 crore girls enter into puberty. And because menstruation is a taboo, around 23% of these girls, means if you make the calculation, 1 in 4 girls start to miss out on schools during her periods.
Right.
So there would be a lack of sanitary, lack of sanitation, which is again, I think all of these things are changing because of Swachh Bharat and
Because of
our honorable
comics like
Prime Minister.
Menstrupedia, for sure.
Menstrupedia, and when our honorable Prime Minister says that the sanitary pad would be distributed at 1 rupees cost,
Right.
but
Right.
still we have a very, very long way to go. So and then whether it is rural or urban, at least 85% of the women follow one or more restrictive customs. It does
Right,
not matter
right.
which socioeconomic background you are. So when we started seeing all this data, we knew that we had to do something about it. But we saw it more like a communication design problem. The way periods were taught and the way periods were spoken is something we thought that we can contribute positively. And it was always talked about in a negative light, whereas if periods was not there, I mean, nobody participating in this podcast or listening to this podcast would have ever existed.
Right.
Women,
Exactly.
women have periods so that human race can propagate. Our mothers have periods. All the listeners, participants,
Exactly.
they had periods, and that is why we were born. So such an essential and such an important biological process with so much of taboo, and then UTI is so common, reproductive health issues are
In
so
general,
common
reproductive
because
health
of
in
deaths
general,
women.
right? Exactly.
Yes. Are so common, and so we thought that we will at least create an environment where menstruation ceases to be a taboo, and we will give people an environment where it is seen in a positive light. So that is why characters, beautiful illustrations, stories, and of course we have to understand that ours is a very sensitive culture, and we really cannot what can we say, we really cannot offend people. So we have to understand that why people don't talk about period is because they're ashamed of talking about it. So how do we empower them and make them comfortable to talk about it? Also, the fact that we have to be culturally sensitive, and that is why Menstrupedia comic was born. We tested it, parents and teachers absolutely loved it. Then we started translating it because India is a very diverse nation, and unless you're not reaching in, like, you're not using the vernacular
One language, right? State-wise,
So
that difference comes around.
Yes, and we are very proud that Menstrupedia is in all languages. But apart from that, all Indian language. Apart from that, we really thought that this kind of approach and this kind of solution is only going to work for the Indian subcontinent, or maybe the South Asian nations, because we share the same culture. But apart from India, the books are locally printed and published in more than 18 different countries, European countries also,
that's amazing.
And then African countries also. So a solution that was made for for a local problem that India was facing. Right now, that solution is pretty much serving at least 20 different countries of the world, and they print it in their own regional languages.
This is amazing. Kudos to you. And like, it's the whole idea of Menstrupedia. I mean, as you said, that parents and teachers also found it very interesting, because I honestly feel that it also, because even for parents, they feel that it is a tough topic to talk about to their children. So Menstrupedia actually becomes a medium to sort of ease it into their entire situation and their entire life, because it also makes it easier for them to explain ki kya hai, kaise hai, kyun hai. It sort of breaks it down in a very fun way. So can you explain it to us, that how does Menstrupedia exactly talk about the entire process of menstruation, sexual health, and reproductive health?
Right. So yes, निहारिका, आपने बहुत सही बोला कि पेरेंट्स बात करना चाहते हैं, टीचर्स बात करना चाहते हैं, पर उनके पास टूल नहीं है बात करने के लिए.
Right.
So अगर हम, if we see puberty, so actually we do not start quickly talking about just periods. Actually, periods are a part of growing up and puberty. So we talk about what are the changes that happens during puberty, so emotional and physical changes. Then everything. Like, so Menstrupedia approach has always been very fact and science based, because
Okay.
science may we read a lot of concepts about how complex things actually, how
Right.
cells are divided. We read
Hmm.
about the entire universe, and then we
Right.
forget to study about our own body. So
Right.
then we gradually move into, we talk about what are the changes, why are these changes occur. Then we talk about, okay, then there is one stage which is periods. What happens in your body when periods happen? Then the practical issues, like if the pain happens, then why do pain happens? What can you do during your pain? How can you take care of your period? So that is the hygiene part. Nutrition is very important, because not many, most of the girls in our country, they go through anemia.
Anemia.
So
Right.
we we had to address, and this happens during puberty, when they have started getting their periods. And somehow people make this connection that because you are bleeding, the blood is coming out of your body, and that's why you're anemic, which again is not true really. Because when you're growing up, the iron content of it in a woman's body really has to be more. And again, it does not depend upon whether you come from a well-to-do families or poor families, or which socioeconomic background you come from. Anemia could affect.
It doesn't discriminate like the humans do.
It doesn't discriminate, yes. So nutrition is very important. So we talk about nutrition a little bit, and then we move to talk about how to take care of oneself during the periods. One of the things that I'm really excited about is also that, when we started talking about all these topics, uh, India was really ready, our nation was ready, people were picking it up, all of those things were happening, and then people were like, how do we tell boys also? Boys also, and somehow boys became a forgotten gender kind of a thing. And Tuheen and I would always often say that, we raise our girls with shame. हम बहुत जल्दी अपनी बच्चियों को अपने बॉडी के बारे में शेमफुल होना सिखा देते हैं, और लड़कों को बहुत जल्दी सिखा देते हैं कि boys will be boys, you can be whatever you are, ignorant. So then we came up with another book called Gulu, and this again talks about growing up, what are the changes that are happening in boys. But in addition to what is the idea of consent, addiction, there is a chapter on periods. So there is this Gulu, the boy character that is there. So in the narrative of the book, the boy character goes and buys a sanitary napkin for her mother. He brings a sanitary napkin for one of his classmates, because his sister also studies in the same school, and he is sensitive. So we wanted to create, like, not only for girls, but I think that if you have to create a safe environment or an equitable world, we will have to raise both boys and girls sensibly
in a similar manner,
in a similar manner. You cannot say that, I will empower the girls and I will not take care of the boys, which largely was happening with our country. So again, Gulu also we are translating into all different languages. And I think I see the shift in the narrative. Like, I see more and more parents are coming forward to talk to their daughters about periods. Many of the parents have given Menstrupedia comic book to their sons itself.
That's so nice.
You read it and you know about menstruation. Yes.
And I think Gulu, the whole concept is very important, because after all, this shame doesn't entirely comes out of the female race. It also comes out of the males. Because the whole thing is that you can talk to a female about it, but you can't talk to a male. So when we live in a society where males would actually know about periods scientifically and as a concept as a whole, so I think it'll make the whole shame idea will sort of weather away. It'll take some time, but it will. So I think the entire concept of Gulu is a great step towards that result also.
Right. So you're really right, Niharika, in saying that it has to be wholesome. What I have found while teaching girls about periods and talking to people for a decade now, that we ourselves isolate our men from the conversation. And so, like, for example, if you think of your fathers, most of our fathers, all of our fathers are a hero. But somehow they couldn't talk to us about periods. Like, my father is definitely my hero. He is my biggest inspiration and cheerleader. But then he couldn't talk about periods. But it was not that he did not wanted to talk. Somehow when he was growing up as a boy, nobody, he
Talked
was
about
isolated
it.
from the
Yeah.
conversation.
Right.
Decent
right.
boy, अच्छे घर के but लड़के ऐसी बातें नहीं करते हैं, things like that. And this is happening in every household. So,
Right.
so what we really hope for, and what we are also seeing is that the collective wisdom around menstruation, growing up, masturbation, consent, addiction, supporting other gender needs to change.
Yes, definitely.
We need to raise more empathetic men, and we need to raise more confident girls. And this also I see a little bit of shift in it, because when Menstrupedia was launched, this was in 2014-15. So those girls who read the Menstrupedia comic book when they were 7, now now they have gone to class 11 and 12, and they are taking the period workshop for younger girls in their school.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so which Niharika is really beautiful. You know why? Because
it is, for sure.
Because the usual wisdom was that however educated our parents were, and they were very forward, and they were very, very loving, but the wisdom was that, okay, my nanny is not going to tell my mother about periods, and she is going to give a 10-pointer rule, and that 10-pointer rule was inherited by me. And then
right.
Now that I know about periods, now that VC cycle will change, and then it wouldn't pass to my daughter. The same thing is happening with boys also. Boys are also giving 10-pointer rule that you have to be like this, you have to be isolated, you have to be insensitive, you can't cry. All of these things. Consent is not, matlab ladki ki naam hai, haan hai, all of those things.
Right.
But if we raise one generation of girl and boys right, the whole vicious cycle would change. And then we can build upon this. We can build a lot of a very robust society over this, where we can talk about a lot of things that otherwise is difficult to achieve when it comes to gender disparity.
Right. So, Aditi, as a woman out there who is trying to talk about menstruation, I'm sure that when you started this whole thing, it wouldn't have been as easy as probably it now is. And you have also worked in rural areas. So, what kind of a difference did you feel in the acceptance of something like Menstrupedia in a rural area and in an urban area?
Okay. So, first of all, when we started, it was really in contrast with what we expected. We expected a backlash, and many people would ask that, did you get a backlash or something? Very surprisingly, every stage we were overwhelmed by the response. Like people would, even if people would not share openly, but they would share with the women folk in the family. Men were very supportive. Definitely people like you, whoever would come to know about Menstrupedia, they would say, okay, I'm going to use my voice, and I'm going to use my channel and my influence to tell at least a couple of more people about Menstrupedia. So that is how it grew, where people, it became a part of a normal conversation. Your second question is, what is the difference between an urban crowd and a rural crowd? So when it comes to misinformation, there is absolutely no difference. So, if you start collecting the kind of questions kids from the urban area and the rural areas are asking about their bodies, they're very, very similar to each other.
Okay.
In fact, I found that in rural areas, it is easier to talk about periods. It is easier to get slots on period education as compared to all the top-notch schools, because they were very concerned about if the parents would think that this is something, what is this, what we are teaching. So in the urban area, when people think that I know a lot, like the general attitude is, and that is why Menstrupedia was never an NGO, it was a for-profit model. So the general attitude is, oh, I don't need it, my kaam wali need it, my house help needs kind of information.
We know, and we also educate our girls, so we don't need it. That was the
we don't need it, and my way of doing is the correct way of doing, is the general attitude of the urban population, which is changing because of the I think it is changing, and this has changed definitely because of education, but with a lot of mobilization,
Mm,
over the last 10 years, if you see the representation of periods in the media or the conversations that are happening, the films that we make, even in films, small snippets that are there, which talks about periods. So
right,
that positive conversation, when it starts to happen, then the urban people started accepting, oh, ये मेरा भी
right,
problem है,
right,
इसमें मैं
right.
participate करूंगा, और
Hmm,
and now you see more and more people come forward and talk about it. But in the
definitely.
very beginning, all our programs, it was very easy to get a slot. When it comes to interior parts of India, when it
Hmm.
came to through the government programs. Now then after some time, then all these big schools also then started approaching us and then started establishing the menstrual
Right.
awareness program.
That's great. And I think that's very, again, as you said, you don't expect people to be so accepting about something जिसके ऊपर already इतना taboo and इतने myths है. So probably again something that we discussed in the beginning also, that people were looking for a tool through which they can
Mm.
sort of start at least communicating about it in an
Yes.
easier manner.
Yes.
And of course, Menstrupedia became that.
Yes.
So, Aditi, how has your journey as a woman been working around Menstrupedia, working around a concept of periods? And has it been easy? Has it been tough? Were there any hurdles? How has it been as a whole?
Uh, I would say if there is one word that can describe my journey, it would be completely magical. Like,
Okay,
how many people would come and say that in my lifetime, I I was able to see the change that I wanted for a 9-year-old Aditi growing up in Gadwa. Uh, and when
amazing.
I see these girls taking period workshop and then just shifting in the shift of period wisdom itself,
Hmm.
was a great thing. And especially right now, like what excites me so much is right now you pick up one problem that our country is facing, and then Indians are ready. All of us are ready to change. All of us are ready to move forward, and this is something. It's such a fantastic time to be alive right now,
Right, right.
really. So it has been really magical. It has been challenging in a bit that when we started it as a business, it was difficult to raise funds for it. So we raised
Hmm.
crowdfunding, and then we raised our first round at Shark Tank India. We were sustainable, so there wasn't much problem there.
Right,
Uh, all the challenges actually shape, so all the
they
crisis
do.
that was there, it was the crisis that made us. What I really look forward to right now is that we as a nation are focusing a lot on the youth, like we have
Yeah,
this
right.
huge population, which is the youth population.
Hmm. The
We definitely
millennials, the
are
Gen
doing,
Z.
yeah,
Right.
the Gen Z. We are also focusing a lot on our, decreasing the child mortality rate. The gender gap has decreased for the first time. Uh, same number of women and same the number of
Same
women
number
in
of
our
men.
country has
Right.
increased as compared to number of men. So we have done a very good job there through Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, all of these things. I don't see a focus program on adolescents, and
Right.
adolescence is the age where it are the formative years. It's a very
Hmm.
confusing
Right.
stage.
Right.
uh,
Right.
ज्यादातर एडोलेसेंट अगर किसी चीज में इंटरेस्टेड हैं तो वो
Huh.
शायद से कोई कॉम्पिटिटिव एग्जाम की तैयारी कर रहे हैं,
Right.
और they aren't doing.
Right.
And I think that if we Menstrupedia right now wants to really empower this particular
Age group of
age
people.
group,
Right.
yes, and make them more wiser, make them
Hmm.
more empowered, then because this is a transitory phase, this is very
It is.
confusing
Right.
phase also.
Exactly.
And
And
this
as
phase,
you mentioned in Gulu, like the topics like consent and topics like addictions, this is the time period when people are introduced to, of course, sexual activities, are introduced to um, addictive substances, and that is where they need to understand that what level of addiction is bad, how much can they use it, how can they get involved with someone sexually, because all of this needs to, it is this particular stage where it starts. So you are very right, it is the formative stage where something needs to be sort of drilled into their heads that okay, this
yes.
is right, this is how you should do it.
Right, right. So when they come to the youth, na, when it is like everybody is focusing on this 18, after 18 and 21, like
Right,
Skill India, all of those things are focusing there.
right.
We really believe that it is easier to raise, to raise proper men, proper boys than to fix
Hmm.
broken men.
Hmm.
The same goes with women also.
Right,
If you
definitely.
look at my journey, I think I took so many years to realize that what is my voice. And this
Hmm.
voice was kind of suppressed. I won't say suppressed, but I found that how weak I am when I was getting my periods during my puberty. That okay, I have to be ashamed of my periods, I have to be
Right,
ashamed of
right,
who I am.
right.
Anything that happens to my body is my fault. So puberty is the place where, and not just about periods. I think there are so many things that adolescent kids want to know.
Hmm.
They don't know where to get the
Get
information
that
from.
information from.
Parents
Right.
wants to teach them. They don't know how to handle this.
Hmm.
So we want to create a ecosystem where we are teaching them all about this and making them, responsible for what they are learning to make them
Right,
more voice. So
right.
8 to 18 age group is something that we right now want to
Focus,
focus because this is
focus
the
on.
group we really understand. We really are very empathetic after our
Right, right. And plus, of course, it also stems from personal experiences. Because that
right.
is how we have seen that. We've seen us, we've seen our friends, we've seen people whom we just might know as acquaintances. Some of them suffer from addictions, some of them suffering through unconsensual non-consensual sexual assault. So that is where, if we give them the right amount of information at that stage, so they will also understand that probably their future generations would not make similar mistakes that probably ours or the previous ones did.
Yes, yes.
So, Aditi, your journey, as you said, that it has been pretty magical. And how was the feeling, being a woman in a man's world, as it is said these days, to become, a part of Forbes 30 under 30 and achieving all that you have at such an early stage in your life? How was that feeling?
Um, So, Niharika, I would say that, I've often asked this question that what was some of the discriminatory practices? I think there was
Hmm.
only one instance where Tugin and I were pitching in front of 4 to 5 investors, all middle-aged, not knowing who taught their daughters about periods. And they just it was kind of a mockery of us, saying that you are just bachas. We were coming from a design background. We did not have an MBA degree or a marketing background.
Right.
So they were like, we do not understand business, um, and this product is going to terribly fail. Like they were concerned about how are we going to pay the bills. Rightly so, because it was such a taboo that, so when a subject is such a taboo, people don't know what is the size of the problem because
Right.
it is so
Right.
hidden,
Hmm.
and hence the size of the market.
Hmm.
So I think now that it has gone to 20 different countries, that an indigenous solution that was developed in India is, helping 20 other countries apart from India. I think it was not a bad proposition. But apart from that, really, I think I got the benefit of being a women entrepreneur. So that is what I'm saying. We live in those times right now, where if you're a women entrepreneur, the ecosystem is such, the kind of conversations that are happening, you get the benefit of being a women entrepreneur. So, when they will make a list of, top 10 women entrepreneurs and all of these things. So
Right.
we really did
Right.
not have to spend much money or any money in marketing or PR.
Hmm.
It was just happening because our nation was, we were ready to pick up those stories. We were ready to
Right.
see our women win. We were ready
Hmm.
to see people like me coming from nowhere, coming from a very interior part of India, win and do good. And
Do better.
not
Right.
it is not just my story. If you see all the
It
top
is
most brands
everyone's.
in
Right.
India, if you see all the top people who are doing, in their lifetime itself, our nation has provided them with, and of course the ecosystem has provided them with so much of opportunities and so many
Hmm.
opportunities that they have shined like anything in their journey. So totally giving this to the times that we are living. I actually got a benefit. I would say that I actually got benefit from by being a women entrepreneur. In fact, if people say that if there was stereotyping or not, my co-founder Tuhin Paul was stereotyped a lot.
Okay. Why
That
so?
yes, because then a man was talking about periods, so he
About
was like,
periods, right?
why do so he has to really find his he has to
Standing in the
he's
whole
like
thing, and again, that is what you're promoting. So it's
right
even better that
now it is being appreciated. So
right,
after like,
exactly.
let's say 8 years 9 years into the
Hmm.
into the business, and then it makes a very great story, and then
Right,
Guru, of
right,
course, is totally based on what are the things that Tuheen experienced during her puberty.
right.
But really, I would say that it was always a plus for me to be a women entrepreneur and be here.
That's amazing. And that's not the first thing that comes to our mind, because again, we are living in the kind of times where, of course, as you said, that we are seeing women grow, we are seeing women take charge there, we are seeing more and more women entrepreneurs. But then again, we also live in a patriarchal society. So that is what sort of the first idea is, that it might not have been easier, but we see that times are changing for sure.
Definitely, times are changing, and of course, stereotyping is there, but
Right.
I think use it in your favor.
Hmm.
Sometimes where a man is needed. So that is why I always say that when two people, when there is a co-founder and when there is a male and a female together, I think that makes a very winning combination. And
Right.
if
It
you
strikes
see
the
a
right
lot of
balance.
yes, right balance. And stereotyping is there, but you should know that which one has to go in front
Hmm.
for what kind of deal. So
Right. Strategic planning.
if in the yes, there's entrepreneurship also. So in the public eyes, if you think that okay, the public is really very appreciative of a women figure, so then I would take care of talking about
Right.
menstruation.
Right.
Now, if there is an investor, and if the investor is talking about numbers, and they are talking about whether we can trust this team or not, so my credibility comes. But when it comes to number, and we know that it's a man world, and it has to
Hmm.
be there. But anyways, our first investor is Namita Thapar. Kudos to her. She's very like
Right.
she's totally like supportive. Apart from that, a little bit biased towards women entrepreneurs
Hmm.
also. And and this biasness has to be there, because
It
we have
does. It
been
is
pushed.
required at this point.
Yes, and we have been pushed so far away that extra push is needed. So
Exactly.
we know that when it comes to operations, when it comes to hardcore running around, I do
Hmm.
take care of printing and a
Right.
little bit of operations, but that is where Tuhin comes into. When a product has to be developed, it's all Tuhin. So we know this. I really think that the whole conversation, we definitely talk a lot about that what was challenging, what was not challenging. When it comes to entrepreneurship, challenges are really gender neutral.
Gen neutral.
Challenges of
Hmm.
raising funds, challenges of uh, uh, hiring people, challenges of
Right.
scaling up, these are really not dependent on whether a male is running a company or a female
Or
is
a
running a
female
company.
is
But
right.
when a male and female together, when they run a company, they both have complementary skills by
Hmm.
which they can really contribute, um, rather than thinking that okay, I'm limited by this, but
Right.
finding our
Right.
way,
Right.
and then making
Right.
sure that whatever change you set out to, I mean whatever your goals were. Like my goal is that no girl ever should be ashamed of her period. That's a huge goal to chase. So to chase that goal, I mean you can just maneuver around all of these cultural
Right.
barriers
Right.
and
Right.
use the things that are in favor.
That are in
And
favor. Definitely.
yes,
So my last question has to be that Aditi, there are a lot of people out there. There are a lot of women out there who are seeing you as an inspiration, who want to become like you, and who want to sort of break out of that cocoon and actually become women entrepreneurs, whether it's for a particular social cause or whether it's in general. So, what is your advice to them?
I have two advices. No, I have three advices for
Okay.
anybody who want to get into entrepreneurship. First of all, entrepreneurship is, if you're a woman, uh, it is one of the best career choices,
Hmm.
because the game plan would be yours. So I'm right now pregnant with my second child, 8 months
Okay.
pregnant.
Many, many
Uh,
congratulations to you.
Thank you. I raised my first child in my office. I am pregnant. I'm working, and I'm planning to raise the second child in my office also. And this is how, I did not have to drop out from the workforce, because if
Right.
you see the LFPR, women's labor force participation ratio, it is decreasing, and
It is, right.
many of the leakages happens when they are getting married or when they are having their first child or second child. So
Right.
entrepreneurship is your game plan, really.
Hmm.
So you should always opt for, if you're a career woman, I think there is no better career path than being an entrepreneur.
Hmm.
Pick up any problem right now in India around you and try to solve it. There are thousands and thousands of users. You really cannot fail. If you're,
Right.
I mean, if you keep trying and keep trying, you really cannot fail. There is
Hmm.
no way you can fail right now in India and the Indian market. The second thing is, I think this is a quote from Maya Angelou, which is also my guiding light, which says that every time a woman stands up for herself, she stands up unknowingly and not without even claiming. She stands up for all women.
All
So
women, definitely.
wherever you get a chance to stand up for yourself, do that, because
Hmm.
you're not only standing for yourself, you're standing for your sisters, for your colleague, for the girls in the family who are coming after you, and for
Right.
older people also.
Definitely.
And because this is about entrepreneurship, please invest in prototyping. If a picture is 1,000 word, a prototype is worth 1,000 meetings. So
Hmm.
make prototypes, keep making it quickly, break it, make it again, break it, test it with your users. It could be a website, it could be an app, it could be a physical thing, it could be a comic book, anything.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Aditi, on ABP Live podcast, Ladies First. And you are definitely a perfect person to show that right now, as you said yourself, that right now we are living in a world where ladies are coming first, and that is how it should be, right? You have proven that you are the perfect girl boss to, represent in front of so many people. Right now, pregnant with your second baby and sitting with me, running an office, giving this interview, and rushing off to probably another project immediately after this
Yes.
interview. So,
Yes.
thank you so much for proving that you are a perfect choice for this particular podcast. You just did during this conversation. And thank you so much for being out there and helping so many girls who now don't have to suffer because of Menstrupedia and because of your brainchild. Thank you so much for doing that for all of us.
Thank you so much, Niharika. I had so much fun talking to you.
Same here. Thank you.